I've been playing music for 25 years. If you're a musician watching this video, take it to the bank that I know something about what you're going through right now. And I know your biggest struggle is the fact that you are stuck in small boxes, small thinking. I know that you're struggling to expand creatively. I know that you're probably playing the same 3 licks on every solo. I know that because I was there, right? So I want to be clear, it's not due to a lack of talent that you're stuck. The real reason is because you don't know how to practice. Later in this video, we're going to talk about what practice actually is, what the mentality of practice is. But before we get into that, we got to ask the most important question. Honestly answer this. Are you making the music you want to be making, right? Because that is what it all boils down to. It's about actualizing a unique creative voice. You're going to have to learn a few skills before you can do that, right? You're going to have to learn a few things about the first principles of music before you can actualize that voice, right? Before you can make the music you want to make. But the good news is, if you're not making the music you want to make now, it's not that hard to install those programs in your thinking to transform your musicianship to becoming boundless. See, musicianship, it's not about playing 1,000,000 notes per second, right? It's about unlimited creative awareness. The funny thing about being a musician is that creativity is your best friend while also being your worst enemy, right? Right now, it's your worst enemy. It's taunting you, right? It's saying, hey, there's this big vision. Why aren't you building it? And you're like, oh, I don't know how to do it, right? That's because you're lacking those first principle skills that unlock the boundless creativity. Without that first principle knowledge, right? Without that conceptual technique, right? You're stifled because you're literally thinking to yourself, I will never be able to do that. And you accept it. I was there. I accepted defeat at one point in my musicianship. I literally told myself crazy lies like, oh, you'll just never be able to do that. Better get used to it. That's what I literally told myself, 15 years ago when I was playing music, when I was coming up in my musicianship. I was resigned to the fact that I was going to be a musician no matter what, but I was lying to myself saying, oh, but you're only ever going to be this good, right? I didn't realize I could transcend my own technique through my mentality. See, right now, your mentality is, I'm stuck. That's where I am. I'll just be stuck, hopefully something magical will happen and I'll be unstuck someday. But for now, I'm stuck. That magical thing you're thinking of, it's getting some mentorship. It's getting some guidance. It's getting some support, right? It's not magic. Just get the support, right? Do the work and experience the transformation. So here's what's keeping you stuck. It's pretty simple. Number one, you don't have a community of musicians to hold you accountable, right? Now, accountability is not just, hey, did you do your homework? It's literally like, let's have a conversation about this stuff and extrapolate on the implications, right? Feeding back your ideas, compounding their potency. And number two, you don't have a mentor who's showing you the actual steps that need to be taken to get to the places that you want to go, right? Mentorship is unavoidable, right? If you want to get to the highest level, go pro, like do music full time, right? You need a mentor who actually shows you what that looks like, because without a mentor filtering out all the noise and chaos and infinite potential of music, you're going to be taking in way too much information. Like with the internet, all the free resources, YouTube, everything like that, it's never been easier to learn everything about music for free, but that's also why it's never been harder, because there's that huge analysis paralysis factor, right, that the internet seems to impose upon us. But imagine having all the steps laid out crystal clear right in front of you with a mentor and community guiding you on every single one of those steps. Because the main reason you're stuck in that loop of confusion, despair, overwhelming anxiety, that you'll never break out of the rut, you'll be an intermediate for the rest of your life, right? All these thoughts looping around. Those are simply a result of you avoiding the work that you know you need to do. And what that work specifically is gaining a bulletproof understanding of the first principles of music. You've been avoiding learning your triads. You've been avoiding voice leading. You've been avoiding chord construction. You're deep in the weeds. You're thinking about too many notes, right? You're avoiding the basics. You're avoiding the fundamentals. And the result of avoiding those fundamentals is it's just going to stunt your creative awareness later on the line. And that's where you're stuck right now. You've been playing guitar for years, but you're still stuck because you didn't lay that foundation. And since there's no foundation, you can't build those creative masterworks, right, that you should be building on a daily basis. Now, I feel the struggle because I was stuck exactly where you are, right? I was stuck in that tiny little headspace where I felt like I was trapped and I couldn't expand my vocabulary, right? I couldn't expand my technique. And I remember that being so frustrating, especially my technique, my physical technique. I didn't know how to expand it, right? I literally thought like you either were going to be born with the dexterity or you'll never achieve it, right? Like all these like false beliefs, these limiting beliefs. And I thought my problems were too complex to solve, right? But what I realized is that everyone's creative deficiencies are a result of a lack of first principle understandings. Once you identify those fundamental building blocks of musical creation, well, then you start to learn how to sequence them, right? Because somebody's going to show you how to think about that, right? You have to think. There's a logic of sequencing these fundamental components, let alone identifying these fundamental components. That's work that everyone needs to be doing, regardless of genre, regardless of vision. If you work with music, you're dealing with the science of sound, okay? Of course, it's an art and a science type thing, right? But it is a science of sound, right? It's a 12-tone system. There's a finite amount of combinations that you need to get intimately familiar with to unlock that boundless creative awareness I speak of. All right, and just to really understand how this all comes together, okay, let's take a look at Ashley, okay? One of the OG legends of the school that we're talking about in this video, Systems for Creation. Ashley was one of the first members to adopt this syllabus and absolutely run with it, right? So we're talking about he understood first principles, right? And what does that look like in the beginning? Specifically, we have this example of Ashley playing triads on giant steps, right? If you're familiar with the Coltrane iconic classic, right? We're going to get into why we did it with giant steps because it's a lot easier than you think, right? Everyone thinks it's hard and scary. But listen to what Ashley's doing with giant steps in this video. He's playing triad inversions over giant steps, right? So that's like one of the first exercise, right? That's like first level coming into school. We show that theory. You learn how to construct those things, right? Because that lays the foundation. Mad shout out, Ashley, OG legend of the school. So what's he doing in that second video, right? He's just ripping lines through another Coltrane sequence, a Satellite, right? Which is like a jazz song, but does that sound like jazz? No, that just sounds like boundless creative awareness, right? And he's only playing triads. He's voice leading triads through the changes of Satellite, right? That's the mind-blowing part for a lot of people. When they come into this program, they didn't realize that if you only play triads, you sound like that, right? Like Holdsworth, Michael Brecker, using Coltrane systems, Coltrane sequences. We actually have a Coltrane curriculum for the advanced students. But as you can see, Ashley is anything but stuck, right? He just took that basic triadic first principle understanding. He was playing them as chords, right? Because obviously anything you play as a chord, you play as a single note, right? He's adapting his technique accordingly, and then he's just increasing the tempo, changing up the harmonic sequence, and it's intergalactic, right? And see, there's an underlying level here, which is that, you know, when you can do that, right, you can improvise that way, right? Well, what do you think that does for your composition, right? Because improvisation and composition are the same thing, right? It's the same thing. But if you can improvise with that level of awareness, real-time decision-making, you know, first principle sequencing, well, what do you think happens when you expand time in composition, right? It's the first principles on both sides of it. The first principles unlocking and completing that triangle of compositional, improvisational, fluency of music. Now here's the kicker, right? I spent 6 years at McGill University to learn this stuff, right? And I'm not even sure I actually did learn all this stuff at McGill in 6 years, right? Because I completed my master's in jazz performance in 2017, right? So I've been out for a minute, right? And I'll tell you, all this stuff I'm talking about right now, right? The ability to play through Coltrane tunes like it's nothing, and also teach people to play through Coltrane tunes like it's a first principle basic. I actually learned that stuff after I finished my master's degree, not during, okay? And that's because the traditional university education system in music is deeply flawed, okay? It's deeply flawed. That's why so many people can go through those programs and literally learn absolutely nothing. Now, I value my time there. I took advantage of those resources. I took advantage of the mentorship, right? I was like, you know, overachiever, get a master's degree in music, right? But I'll tell you, the entire time I was there, I was so frustrated, right? Because remember I was saying, like, I accepted defeat. I was like at this brick wall that I'll never surpass technically, right? And I was just at a music university having those like existential crises like every day. And it wasn't until I left that I was able to distill all that information, right? All that undergrad, master's degree, jazz performance information, distill it into a basic, single, unified mentality. And once I was able to do that, well, I started teaching it to other people. And of course, now my whole methodology has reached the sharpest point imaginable. But the fact is, I did not need to spend all that time and money, right, to learn this stuff. And I know that now because I've taught it to many people in 5 months, right? I've given them the benefit of a master's degree in 5 months, and then they go and prosper with it, save their 6 years of life and $200,000, you know what I'm saying? The only thing I really needed was a mentor who would show me first principles. That's it, right? And the crazy part is I didn't actually have one person who could ever boil it down and distill it, right? That's kind of crazy. So for that reason, yeah, this program is definitely on the cutting edge of music pedagogy, right? But the thing is I think everyone's been overcomplicating it. I think we can agree that pedagogy with the university system and also the way it's taught on the internet, you know, it's like free resource, free resource, free resource. It's like, wait, what's the roadmap and what's the mentality of the roadmap, right? That's what it really comes down to. All right, so now the obvious question, you know, let's address the elephant in the room here. What are the first principles? I've kind of already said it, but it comes down to triads and voice leading, because triads are boundless, okay? I'm not going to get too technical, but a fundamental understanding of triads in what I call triad configurations, right? Open, closed, root position, first inversion, second inversion, that stuff. That's like the first level, and understanding how to wield that, because those triad configurations, those are the first principle building blocks of music, right? That's what you don't know right now. You don't know what those shapes are on the fretboard. Now, if you want to know what those shapes are, you can literally book a call and I'll show them to you, right? But I'm not going to do that right now, right? Because I'm sure you can already imagine there are many shapes you haven't considered on the fretboard. But you have thought about shapes though, right? Interesting how the fretboard and geometry seem to come together in a very useful way. We can map our triad configurations out on the fretboard. And that's how we begin to understand the relationship between the fretboard and the first principles of music. So how are we going to provide you with that master's level education? Well, it's obviously going to be 3 pillars, right? Pillar 1, fundamentals, right? Voice leading triadic configurations, playing triadic configurations through forms, right? Through harmonic sequences, forms. Jazz standards are an example of a form, right? Forms are just harmonic sequences that can repeat over a certain amount of bars, right? That kind of thing. The things that you would improvise over and expand, extrapolate on the melody, extrapolate on the chord voicings, play chord melodies, all that different stuff. All of your first principles of creation are understood through forms, right? Jazz standards provide us with this endless repertoire of forms just to practice. And that full circles back to old school, counterpoint pedagogy from like the 1700s, right? Where they're just taking like a part of a chorale and then just extrapolating with it, right? That's what we're gonna do with jazz standards. That's how we learn composition, is we study the precedent of composition, right? See how, the cycle of force, the Coltrane sequencing, tritone substitutions, how does all that stuff work in the context of composition, aka form construction, right? So yeah, the first thing we do is unlock your ability to improvise through form, right? Because that's the foundation of all your compositional awareness. As we described, composition, improvisation, they're the same thing, right? So in order to understand what composition feels like, right, you start with improvisation, right? And then you slow down time. But you're using composition to build out your pathways in improvisation. So there's this whole continuum. We have a curriculum in the school called composition practice, right? Because practice does not happen without composition. Practice is about expanding your vocabulary, right? And learning how to execute that vocabulary, right? Now we're getting in the mentality of practice, right? We talked about that earlier. The mentality of practice is everything. Knowing how to practice is everything. And understanding improvisation through form, that's your basic reference point for effective practice. That's where it starts. But in this curriculum, you're literally gonna learn that stuff in the first month or less, right? Even if you've never played chord changes before, there's a lot of people who have never played chord changes. Actually, there's a fair people who have never even played guitar that are in this course and blowing it sky high. Now, pillar 2, of course, skill evolution, right? That's essentially how to teach yourself, right? That's essentially the system for composition and practice that you're gonna take with you for the rest of your life, right? Skill evolution, that's the second pillar. You need to learn how to think, right? That's part of the mentality thing, because understanding how to think about those components of music is the thing that opens up the boundless creative awareness. Mentality is everything. And no surprise, pillar 3, it's the community mentoring, right? The mentorship of not just one individual, but a community, right? And the core basis of that community in the school, in Systems for Creation, that's the school that we're talking about, Systems for Creation, that's what it's called. There's a faculty of masterful musicians, right? Musicians who went to the highest level of education and then have transcended that knowledge as creators, right? That's the faculty of this school, and the student body is just growing on top of that faculty. And we found that this community mentoring is the most effective thing that just compounds all that knowledge, right? Because you've got the syllabus, right? You've got the roadmap, you've got the support system, right? The support system is 3 live classes a week, right? Those classes are there just to help you through whatever you're going through. And you're going through the roadmap, you're going through the syllabus, right? So you need to come to class, you need to learn how to think, you need to ask questions, right? You got to take advantage of those resources that are available to you that work if you take advantage of them, right? You come to class, you talk about the syllabus, we talk about practice, we talk about composition. You get feedback from not just me, but the other faculty, the community mentoring. Like, that's your accountability, you know what I'm saying? All right, full circle back to the most important question. Are you making the music that you want to make, right? Are you making the music that you are genuinely proud of? And how do you become proud of your music, really, right? Your music is a reflection of the work that you've put in, right? So if you put in the work and you know that you've put in the work, well, then you're going to be proud of everything you've done. It's authentic at that point, right? And authenticity, really, it's about genuine conviction in knowledge, right? You're authentic when you no longer doubt yourself, right? How do you get to the point where you don't doubt yourself? You do the work. You learn, right? You learn the first principles. You learn how to think about the first principles, right? That's what you do, okay? So if that's making sense to you, you're going to book a call with me. We're going to talk, right? We're going to see if you're a fit for this program, right? Because this is not for everybody, right? In order for this program to get to where it's gotten, which is we're currently at 64 students. We started this thing about a year ago, and the community is the best part of the whole thing, right? In order for that community to remain as powerful as it is, I have to make sure everyone who comes in is a good fit, right? The one thing you're definitely going to get on that call is a radical shift in your mindset, right? I'm sure that's already taking shape, right? Your mentality is already shifting. Like I said, mentality is everything, right? Get on that call. Let's have a conversation, right? Right now, I'm actually taking all the calls, right? All the enrollment calls, I'm doing them. I'm the founder. I've got a faculty, I have some other people working in the program. But in terms of admission, enrollment, that's all up to me, right? That's going to expand. We're growing very rapidly, actually, right? And the price on this thing has gone up significantly. So book a call ASAP, right? If you can, right? The calendar does fill up very quickly, and then we have to pause it, right? Because if the calendar was just open all the time, it's just I wouldn't have time to focus on the students, right? But right now, as you're watching this, yes, we are looking to take on some new students who are a good fit to the community, right? Motivated musicians who basically want that master's level, music education, right? But you want to save 6 years of your life, obviously, and you don't want to spend $200,000 US, right? You want to get it at a reasonable price, right? That you can actually pay for. You want to get it at a price you don't have to go into debt for, obviously. And see, this is why I know this is the beginning of something major, right? Because that university education, right? That's so expensive. It's so freaking expensive. What? Who wants that? No one wants it. It doesn't even work, really. So the university is overcharging, and they're not even delivering on the actual thing, right? So I do think our school, Systems for Creation, is going to grow monstrously. I'm prepared for that. And like I said, right now, if you book a call, you're talking to me. We're going to have a good conversation. I will show you triad configurations at the very least. I'll show you some stuff that you could definitely just run with if you want. But if you want to go all the way, you want to go the full distance, yeah, I'll give you the master's level education foundation in about 4 months, right? In that 5th month, that's when I'll just unleash the floodgates of infinite creativity on you, right? But we're going to lay that foundation first, right? And as we're laying that foundation, you're learning how to think, right? And then there's that just exponential jump that hits when it all compounds, right? And that usually happens for most people sometime around the 4th month, right? Generally, people complete this program in 5 to 6 months, right? And I'm talking about a master's level education, but even better than that, right? So, yep, it sounds too good to be true because no one's thought of it yet, but we have at Systems for Creation. So book a call, right? I don't know what you're doing if you're not doing that right now because, time is limited. So speak to you soon.